Hi, everyone. Welcome to another session of Webinar Wednesdays. Today's session is in collaboration with First Hive, who are actually an alumni of our 2020 FinTech Accelerator program. Today, the panel are going to be taking you through the 6 tips for building an effective and secure marketing technology stack. In this panel, we're joined by VM Kumar, who is the co-founder and CEO of ML Brains Technologies. We're also joined by Aditya, who is the founder and CEO of First Hive, and as well as Suraj Keswani, who is the Vice President Customer Success at First Hive. And we're joined by Charandeep Singh, who is the Head of Marketing and CRM at TVS Credit. I will leave the floor to Suraj, who is going to be moderating today's panel.
Hello and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining this webinar. We're going to be discussing a very interesting subject today. The banking, financial services, and insurance sector is really a data gold mine. All of us as customers, we share a lot of personal information with the companies we are associated with, while they continue to gather information on transactions and behavior from us all the time. Given this, it's really a very interesting data set for analytics and modeling. However, the industry is highly regulated. We all know that there are explicit privacy norms around this. Given the nature of the industry and the data that it has, technology plays an integral role in delivering customer understanding and experience. Hence, selection of technology while building the technology stack has become a key focus area for all marketers. In this context, we shall today discuss what goes into building a super effective and secure marketing technology stack, and hope to offer you some top tips by the end of this session. I have a very impressive panel that joins me in discussing the subject. Let me introduce them once more. Charandeep Singh Chawla, he is the head of marketing and CRM functions at TVS Credit. He is also an agricultural engineer with a master's in marketing from NMIMS Mumbai. With about 15 years of experience in marketing, sales, CRM, and strategy across BFSI and automotive sectors, he has led various initiatives across brand communication, market research, digital marketing and strategy, and customer relationship management with stints across Mahindra and Mahindra Finance. Welcome, Charandeep. Our second panelist is BM Kumar. Kumar is a co-founder and CEO of ML Brains Technologies, which provides artificial intelligence services to small and medium enterprises. He's a technology growth marketer with about 18 years of experience in the B2B, B2C, and startup space. He's been a head of marketing before, and his experience spans across revenue management, growth hacking, lead generation, and product management. He's worked with organizations like Airtel, Tech Mahindra, Etisalat in the UAE, Jumbo Electronics, and with startups like A-Shield Technologies and Reverie Language Technologies. Welcome, Kumar.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Thank you. Our third panelist is Aditya Bamidipati. Aditya is the founder and CEO of First Hive, which is a global customer data platform. He's been a serial technology entrepreneur and loves solving problems for marketers. His stewardship has helped First Hive to be amongst the first few to imbibe machine learning into customer data profiling and deliver as much as 6x ROI to some of the world's largest brands and in their marketing initiatives. He's worked with organizations like P&G and iGate, and had his first startup gig with a consumer engagement company called eMart Solutions. Welcome, Aditya. I think I must thank you all for sparing time this afternoon and joining us on this webinar. And I look forward to a very engaging session with you. My first question, I thought I would probably open with this. Given the situation that we exist in today with so much of flux in the conditions around us, customer preferences continue to evolve with time. And with respect to maybe choice of investments, with respect to loan products, maybe the wallet that they use, etc. It could be with the mode of engagement that they have with brands, which could be in the form of going to a physical branch, maybe digital transactions, maybe neo-banking, and then the channels of engagement with the brands as they exist today. In this COVID era, all this is even more true. What are the changes that you envisage or you witness today, And how, in your view, are organizations adapting to these changes? I'd like to throw this question open to the panel. Maybe Charan, if you could probably go first, and maybe Kumar and Aditya can share their views of this later.
Sure. First of all, good afternoon, everyone. I hope my sound is clear.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Okay. So Suraj, your question has three parts to it. So I'll talk about each of them one by one, and I think Aditya and Kumar, whenever they feel like pitching in, they can pitch in. So definitely there has been a change in terms of the product mix itself, right? What people are really looking for, and so there are enough reports which tell how payments first had a dip in when the COVID started in India. Like there was a dip in payments in April, May, and then they started picking up from June onwards. And I think by September they exceeded the numbers of Jan Feb. So in terms of payments, definitely there was a dip initially because people were uncertain whether they should spend money. There was an uncertainty around jobs and income sources. So that was a pattern in terms of payments. In terms of loans, four key trends which we are seeing are both from the side of the customer as well from the NBFCs. So one, of course, is that the need for the loan itself is changing, right? So there is definitely a uptick in terms of personal loans, or unsecured loans. So there are more people who are seeking those kind of loans, but they are not necessarily seeking it for the needs which are very luxurious in nature, or like holidays or things like that, because travel sector definitely got impacted and people are not seeking personal loans for things like those, right? But there is a definite trend of end use change for personal loans which we are seeing. Small ticket loans have seen a major uptick, so that's a key change in the loan space. Lenders have become more cautious, and that's where data analytics, all these marketing stacks, credit underwriting processes based upon analytics will start playing a larger role. So that has definitely changed. And one change which, I mean, we can't repeat it enough, is how digital channels in terms of lending, especially the NBFCs. Like I belong to that category of NBFCs which are largely into vehicle loans, right? So we don't have many online products per se. Like I can't sell insurance or personal loan online today, but within even our space where we are selling unsecured loans to our existing customers, where wet signatures and regulations allow us to do things online, we have seen a major uptick there. And in terms of investments, there has been an interesting trend, though the volume of investments may not have increased drastically, but the number of retail investors, like I was talking to some people in mutual fund industry and all, they have definitely increased because people were sitting at homes, they were uncertain about their future, they want better returns from mutual funds and equities. So number of retail investors definitely got more, new investors got enrolled last year. The volumes may not depict that. So that has been the changes or the trends in the product mix. The second part of the question is like the channels, right? The channels through which, here I'll specifically focus on NBFC sector, to which I belong. I feel that there are three kinds of customers if we segment from their preferences of channels, which we have seen over last 1 year. One are those customers who were already there on digital, right? They are digitally savvy. They, let's call them digital natives. Second category of customers were those customers who were the new converts, right? Who adopted digital. They were using digital in different form for consumption of content, maybe video, using Facebook, WhatsApp, the apps which are for personal consumption. But they were the ones who started using it for financial services, like applying for loans or making payments for the first time in last 1 year. So them I would call neo converts. And the third guys are those guys who still prefer, right? There is a huge segment in India who still prefer going to a physical branch or doing things physically, meeting a rep and getting things done. Now companies have evolved different ways of engaging with them. I see clearly that the people who have already been there in digital space before, make transacting online, they have got, especially from the leader brands, like for example in India, Zomato, I would say, though it's a food service brand, but in terms of payment space they introduced a lot of new things. The key trends which emerged, which I would like to use that as an example, is that firstly they made changes in a such a way in their apps that the apps became more intuitive. So I think, how do you make your digital assets more intuitive? What really customer is looking for as a next step in that journey of UI or UX. I think that happened a lot faster. I saw a lot of changes in not only in Zomato but other apps which are dealing in financial services, how to make them more intuitive. The bots became more empathetic. So you could not really differentiate last year whether you're really talking to a human agent or a bot, and they got empowered. I mean, I have got a lot of refunds that just on the go while I'm in my own personal transaction. So I think that's the way forward for customers who are used to digital. They will expect more intuitive as well as empathetic and empowered digital assets. The people who are new, especially in India, they will require what I would call three V's: that you have to use voice a lot, you have to use vernacular a lot. In India, there are multiple languages, so you can't just have English as your choice of languages. Today, when last year COVID started, our own company's app was available only in one language. Today, it is available in 7 Indian languages. So I think vernacular plays a big role. And visual, right? You can't rely on text because there are people who can't even read regional languages. So for those new converts, these are the three things which we must take care of while developing our channels of engagement. And the people who still prefer physical, I feel for them you have to kind of educate them to move towards self-service. uh, you have to visibly promote that your branches or your outlets are really secure, safe, and you're taking all precautions. You have to visibly be seen. You can't say that your job is done, that you have taken precautions. You have to ensure that those precautions are visible, there is enough education around self service, and then you move them to the other two categories, so that you get some benefit, and not totally rely on. But physical will not go away. That is very clear, that even in these dire circumstances we had enough flow to our branches. And so that's continues to going to happen, especially in auto loans, where people will go to the dealerships to see the products. So I think that will happen. In terms of channels, definitely we saw a more usage of app as compared to my customer portals, whether it was to make payments or to interact with us. The chatbot started playing a larger role in last 1 year. WhatsApp for business started playing a big role. We get a huge volume of inbound inquiries through that channel. So those are some of the trends. I mean, if I've tried to cover all the three. I hope this covers what you really wanted to know.
Yes, as a follow-up to that, Charan, just wanted to understand how, in your view, are organizations adapting to these changes? What is it that they're gearing up to in terms of using technology to be able to adapt to these changing customer preferences?
See, definitely there has been an increased focus on two, three areas. So, for example, one of the areas which has come into intense focus is the CX. That how are you spending time on your processes in customer experience, and definitely for digital assets, UI and UX is a subset of that. So I think that has been one key area in the front end of the marketing stack. At the back end, I think this was already happening, though I'm not going to give COVID the benefit of this. The importance of having better quality data warehouses or data lakes, and therefore building good quality analytical model. That this process was already there in a BFSI sector in India. It has just got further hastened. So I think there is immense focus in front end on improving, as I said in the previous answer itself, that all those things of intuitive or empowered bots can only be achieved if you have a good CX or UI UX strategy in place. So I think that has been one major change. And the fact that analytics process or data related sciences, those have kind of hastened. It was already, I think fintech and BFSI space was already ahead of the curve as compared to other sectors, but definitely the process has got hastened in last 1 year.
Kumar, would you want to add your points of view?
Yeah, sure. So good afternoon, everyone. And I think Charan has covered, the financial aspects, the NBFC and how they have been impacted. So I would, based on my experience in telecom, probably share the other side of the experience, and I think no surprises that for telcos, the data packages, the demand for mobile internet as well as broadband has suddenly shot up. And so most of the houses where there was a standard broadband, most of them have upgraded to higher speeds, because now not only not only the breadwinner of the home is working there, but also the kids are studying from home. And of course, if the lady of the house may be working, or even if she's a housewife, like, so all data requirements are now being served by the broadband or the mobile internet. So clearly that has shot through the roof. And initially the telcos had to even struggle to kind of maintain the same speeds and all. And they did quite a remarkable job over within a few months to kind of upgrade the capacities. And so other thing that we have seen in terms of requirement is that a lot of new internet users have come on board. And the challenge that we saw is that many of them are not English speaking, especially in a country like India. And even in Middle East, a lot of expats may not be very comfortable in English. In fact, a lot of the natives in Middle East also prefer to transactions in Arabic. So suddenly the languages came into the fore, that how do you serve your customers in a language that they understand and feel comfortable with. So for example, within India there are close to 540 million plus people who are having the spending power, but they prefer Indian languages for any kind of transaction. To put this in perspective, like English speaking people in India is close to about 150 to 200 million. So the market is effectively 2.5 times more if you can address non-English speaking customers who have the purchasing power. So that was one challenge that we saw. And different companies, including the way Charan said, they have expanded into their app into multiple languages. So that was something very, very interesting. And yeah, and in terms of the channels of engagement, of course, there, like most of the businesses have been forced to move online if they were not already planning to do that. A lot of companies were already in the process of upgrading their online channels because they were organically growing. COVID has obviously pushed their plans ahead, and made ensure that most of the companies prepone their plans and then upgrade their infrastructure, launch apps, or go more online and focus on the online channels. And so the challenge with that is that once you're online, it's a much more interactive, it's a two-way communication channel, unlike, let's say, TV ad or a newspaper ad where it's a one-way thing. So a lot of changes need to be done in the internal processes of companies, and that is where they are going through changes. And we will probably discuss those and how marketing stack can help in those changes. We'll probably discuss those in the upcoming questions.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kumar. Aditya, as a owner of a technology platform, you interact and engage with corporations around and across industries. How do you see their definitions changing in terms of demands to cater to these new consumer requirements?
Hey, Suresh. Thanks. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Good to be here along with DIFC. So, DIFC folks, shout out to you for this webinar. Um, See, I think, having been in the broader marketing, industry for over now 15 years, the underlying wave has been in this direction any which way, that you've seen an increasing emphasis on digital interactions. You've seen increasing emphasis on multiple channel communication. You've seen services being delivered digitally or enabled digitally, and so on. So there's been a general directional flow for quite some time now. But if anything, last year was this, uh, the this unseen momentum that just caught up with everything. And if anybody was on the fence about uh, whether or not, that just got thrown out of the window. And if there were questions around when, that just got accelerated, and there was adoption. So in that sense, 2020 was a massive disruption from a adoption and acceleration perspective. The different industries, I think, got affected differently. But from a financial services standpoint, the whole 2020, 2021 was obviously a massively turbulent year when it started off with a lot of uncertainty, like Charan said, and then subsequently, as things started stabilizing in terms of the uncertainty being put to rest, I think there was a lot more consumer adoption or kind of transaction volumes kind of went back to what it was. But what did not change was the fact that enterprises across the world, after that little bit of pause in the AMJ quarter in 2020, kind of got back to saying that, look, we need to accelerate all of these plans. So we saw a huge upswing in enterprises sitting down and saying, look, what do we need to do with our marketing infrastructure? What do we need to do with our with our ability to collect and make sense of all of the data? Because suddenly there is a lot more data that's coming through than what they had seen in the past. And there is also this expectation of the consumer that the entire experience has to be digital where possible, right? Not just parts of the experience being digital. So the both from the data collection and making sense out of that data to the entire workflow redesigns that some organizations had to go through to be able to make transactions from being digitally enabled to complete end-to-end delivery via digital. I think there is a lot of move that happened there. You also saw a lot of organization-wide initiatives around adoption of data lakes or adoption of customer data platforms, the ability to deploy omni-channel communication and engagement, and so on and so forth. So I think it's been a really interesting year of acceleration. I think there's a before and after year in many ways for a lot of companies, where a lot of the things kind of just stacked up to make sure that enterprises adopt to this inorganic change that happened, and all of the adoption internally kind of just fell in place. So that's kind of what we saw. Of course, there's a lot more to it, but that's kind of what we saw across industries, financial services, of course, but and like Charan said, they were already ahead of the curve in compared to a lot of other industries. But a lot of the traditional industries as well kind of fell in place. Like we've seen companies in auto, we've seen companies in manufacturing kind of do the same thing.
Right. So I think we all agree that this year has probably been in a sense, a watershed year for technology taking the next leap around the world, deployment across industries. So I think it's been consistent in that sense. I don't think any other industries moved so fast and so far in such a short span of time per force, really. Given that, I think there are a lot of organizations in this run to set up layers of technology to create different kinds of functionalities, are in the process or have already bought technologies for different functions. Now, some of these they offer certain functionalities and certain amount of intelligence. These may be deployed on premises. Some of them are on cloud. These are systems and silos, and there are others which are part of large processes. Do we see a need for these systems? So Charandeep mentioned, right, CX, UI and UX have become very critical. Digital migration of customers has moved on at a very fast pace, but that has also raised customer expectations. Omni-channel engagement and hyper-personalization have become the norm. Now, given this, do you see it's important that these systems need to talk to each other to be able to build a central intelligence which identifies a customer and engages with them intelligently? So in this sense, how do you ensure optimal utilization of the various technologies that you would have probably bought in your respective organizations? Or how does an organization do it with legacy systems in place already and newer technologies available on the block today? Charan, would you want to take that?
Yeah, okay, I'll try my best because I'm not a tech expert, but I like to give one or two examples from our own. I mean, everybody uses these products and you will see that there is a difference. So for example, one of the things which we all did more of in last 1 year is watch online content, right?
Yeah.
So now everybody has used Prime Video and Netflix, and we clearly see that both have their own set of algorithms at the back end to make recommendations, right? But then you also see that the recommendations, the way they are making are different, right? At least you can get that sense, right? So maybe Amazon is doing it based upon, let's say, the clusters, or the tags which they put on the videos content, right? That maybe a language tag or a genre tag, and therefore the recommendations are based upon that, right? While Netflix is maybe going a level deeper and trying to understand your preferences from a different point of view, right? In fact, in Netflix, the algorithms ensure that you see different thumbnails if you don't click on a particular video for let some time, and they'll start showing a different thumbnail to catch your attention. So definitely there is something more robust, or joined in their algos that maybe the other company hasn't got it right. uh, from a personal example, I still get, right, I have been married for around 12 years now, and I still get shadi.com mailers, to get married. I So I really don't know what kind of database they are using. I mean, they are a pure e-commerce based company, and they have been into email marketing for like donkey years now, and they are still maybe just relying on a pure database. They are not realizing that if somebody registered on their profile, let's say a decade back, may have got married. I mean, I'm not saying everybody does, but so I think that what you are pointing out is a key problem area. And what we see in BFSI, that the core loan origination system, right, that has the that has the highest sanctity, right? And working with different martech tools, one of the issues which we generally would face, so I'm not even going into the silos part of it, right? Because most of the systems in a BFSA has to talk to that LOS system at some point of time. So integration, the API based, the API based, what do you call it, integrations, these are very important, right? But at the same time, many times what we have seen is that all the tools which are available in the market may not necessarily be suitable for the LOS which you are using. So I think the decision point is that for what products you should avoid, because fintech is such a wide world, and there are so many things available. You feel like a child in a candy store, right? So you can pick up anything. So how do you avoid that, the phenomenon of getting distracted by a newest attraction in the town, right? So your blueprint, that what you really want to achieve, the goals, and how they align with the core systems is very important. And therefore one of the functions which uh, gain a paramount importance within the IT teams also is the enterprise architect, right? How does he lay out the entire landscape of your IT infra? And API based integrations, the microservices architecture have started playing a larger role over last few years. So that these issues of silos, because you can't replace your core systems overnight, right? So therefore, how do you do those integrations, and therefore you are able to evaluate the newer tools or the technologies which you want marketing to get helped with based upon these parameters, and not just go by what they offer in isolation. So I think that should be the way forward.
Kumar, your views on this?
Yes. So I've been quite fortunate in the sense of working in the telecom industry. We have always had, a lot of data about the customers. In fact, one of our CEOs that I used to work with used to joke that we know more about a person than their spouse. So we know like exactly whom they are calling, where they are going, how long they stayed there, how much did they pay, what did they probably purchase, and so on. So so we have a lot of information about the customer, and so that also led to, in a way, the challenge that how do we keep that safe? Because like Uncle Ben of Spider-Man says, with great power comes great responsibility, right? And also for telecom there comes great regulation. So in that sense, we had to be ensured that the data is stored properly. There were a lot of KYC norms that had to be followed. So we had like enough and more data. However, if we wanted to have a complete picture of a customer, and this is all I'm talking about in 2005, and now the things have become like 10x more complicated, and there are that which means there is probably 100x more data about that same customer now. with telcos and with the Googles of the world. So how do we ensure that this data is stored properly and not misused? And at the other end, how do we ensure that all the transactions of a customer are actually taken into consideration while an offer is being sent to them? Because finally, you also need to ensure that you are upselling, cross-selling, because those are the business needs. So that always remains a key challenge. So there is no doubt that all these systems that were in silos have to talk to each other. So telcos obviously started with the BI, which was most popular at that point of time, and then moved to a data warehouse and then big data. However, each of those also had their own challenges because many of those were kind of not made for offline transactions. For example, what happens if a customer walks into the Airtel store and then tries to, or Etisalat store and then tries to do a transaction, or if he complains on Facebook, how do you integrate all those? And obviously the logical conclusion was that we need to have a single picture for each customer, and then how do we move to a very, very hyper personalized marketing. So in a way, our target segment is one, and we know that customers so deeply well. I call this actually as the PDF of the customer. So we need to know the pain points of the customer. We need to figure out his desires of the customer, the D for desire, and then what are the fears that he has to move from his pain point to his desired state, right? So the PDF of the customer has to be clear. And personalization is not just about sending hi first name or hi last name and then sending out an email. Obviously those were there like 5-10 years back, which improved the open rates of the email, but those are like very, very basic. The way world is moving now, we have like so much of technology and tools available that we can personalize landing pages, we can personalize the offers and so on. But all of this obviously depends on the accuracy of the underlying data that you have. And hence that becomes very, very critical. Suraj, you're
I'm
on
sorry.
mute.
Yes, I'm sorry. So my personal experience has been slightly different. All of us are customers of telecom companies and of uh, you know financial organizations, whether it's banks or insurance companies, etc. My experience has been that whenever I've reached out to them across multiple channels, I've always received responses in silos. So different teams across different channels with different SOPs and different SLAs probably reach out with canned responses to address whatever you are saying, and it may or may not necessarily really get addressed. And there are times when you get different responses from different teams, and that kind of has, in my view, at least for me, has aggravated my engagement with the brand. And that is where my personal thought was that's important for systems to be able to talk to each other. All these entities are very large organizations who probably spend tens or hundreds of crores of rupees layering themselves with technologies to build certain functionalities. Now, at the end of the day, if all of this put together does not contribute to great customer experience, then my thought is that there is greater need for greater integration of all of these to be able to reach out to a customer meaningfully. And that is where I was coming from when I kind of asked you this question to say, is there a need for systems to talk to each other and hence build meaningful, to enable meaningful engagement with the customer?
Yeah, so Suraj, I will just give a brief response on that. So that's a
Sure.
very, very valid input because, while companies are trying to get this one picture of the customer, it is still quite difficult. In theory, it's easy, but in practice, it's quite difficult. And while you can always improve the marketing technology stack of it, the people stack is still not that easy to address. People are still thinking in those old structures and old functions, and that always takes a long time to kind of internally correct and then ensure that we all respond to the customer as a single unit.
Right, right. So Kumar, taking this further, if we are going to, let's say if companies need this to happen, and let's say they're working on this, and there are various other companies who are in different stages of maturity, right? Some of them are really mature, some of them are starting their journey today. What kind of considerations should organizations have when they are selecting components to build their MarTech stack, keeping the end customer experience in mind? What do you think should be the components, or should be the feature sets, or should be the capabilities of the system that they should look at when they're evaluating adoption of certain technologies?
Yeah, so so obviously, whenever if it's a startup, then the evolution happens in a different way. While for an established organization like say Etisalat or TVS Credit and other larger organizations, there is always a set of existing tools that are there. So the key concern that is there while we select these tech stack is that how does it work and integrate with our existing tools. So for a startup, those will be very limited, but for an established company, those will be a large set of tools, and hence it becomes very critical that the new tech that we are choosing should work well with these, and then it should work like a integrated unit rather than as a standalone tool. So that becomes very critical. Obviously, the kind of range of solutions those are offered becomes a key thing that we consider while evaluating a product. And also, in terms of how does this, how does this tool fit into our long-term strategy? Is it kind of future-proof and will grow as we scale up, and also as we have newer requirements is another consideration that we have, because as head of marketing or as the CEO, you obviously want to deal with as limited tools as possible, which will kind of give you all the requirements that you have. So those are some of the key requirements that we look at while evaluating different tools, and then pricing and all those factors come into play at a much later stage.
I think some interesting points you make, Kumar. Integration with legacy systems and at the same time future ready are challenges that I think today's technology platforms or technologies would probably have to gear up to make sure that they meet expectations of customers and consumers both going forward. Charan, would you want to add to this? You're on mute, please.
See, if the question is like, let me just paraphrase your question. Is if the question is how do you evaluate whether the what technology to really onboard in the company? Is that the question, right?
Yes.
Yeah, basically. So the point is that definitely the first step is that as a marketing head, what are the goals you are trying to achieve, right? So for example, if I am looking at a tool which helps me give a more personalized experience, picking from what you said in your previous question, then just technology itself would not help, right? If my underlying data structures are not suitable, even the best of technology would not work. So I think first criteria is what are the goals you are trying to achieve, right? Because technology is just that technology. It's not a strategy for marketing, right? So there is this tendency, as I said, attractive distraction, that people think that this technology will solve my problem. I don't think that happens at all, right? So technologies generally don't solve problem until unless you have a goal for that technology. So I think firstly, very clearly, as a marketing head, my job would be to define what I want to achieve out of it, right? Whether it is personalization, because I also think that there's a lot of talk around hyper personalization, but it is not necessary for all products. So for example, why would a FMCG company look at personalization in products? They might look at personalization in terms of their delivery mechanisms, but they may not change anything in their products, right? A NBFC might be personalized in their services, the way they actually deliver the loan, but their loan products might be very cookie cutter, right? There is not much you can play around with a loan design. So personalization also has to be defined as a goal in very different ways depending upon what industry you are from. So I think the first step is the goals. Second is that marketing and sales, right? There are funnels, right, where there is a handover which is happening between marketing and sales generally own the core technology systems, right? So are you aligned with that? How do they define success? Like in many of the conversations I have with marketeers, they define their ROI as, let's say, how many form fills I got, right? Or how many leads I got at max, how many appointments I got, irrespective whether the actual end conversion has happened or not. So that alignment, and that understanding that they own the core system, and therefore you have to choose the technology which talks to that, rather than the other way around, right? Because the investments in those systems have been made much earlier, and there is a lot of stuff which is lying out there. So I think that alignment is very important. Third criteria is like, what is the gap which exists? Like, so if I have decided that these are my goals, right, I should not, like, I have seen we have also made these mistakes, right? So for example, I want a awareness related or a engagement related tool, I might have worked with two different technologies to get that for two different products, right? Without realizing that, okay, or a lead management solution, I might have two LMSs in my company today. Whether that, if suppose one is achieving my goal, why I need the other one? Just to try out something new. So I think identification that where I have gaps and then go after those kind of tools is something which is very important. And the litmus test of anything you're bringing, if it is complicating your process, then don't buy that technology. It has to simplify the process. If it is complicating, adding more to the madness which is already there, then you should not go ahead and do it, irrespective of how good that technology is. So those are the three, four things which I'll take care of while looking at a fintech or a martech solution.
Appreciate that. Uh, Aditya, as a product owner, what in your experience do marketers? So while Charan has laid out his thoughts and BM has shared what he thinks about uh, going forward, how should technology stacks play out? As a product owner, again, with your experience of interacting with a very large set of industries and organizations, what do you think marketers expect from the technology stack?
Yeah, no, so I think some of the points that Charan made are very true. And I think those are some of the things that we've evolved to as well over the years as we've worked in this space. See, it's a very complicated objective that enterprises have. You have you're constantly toggling long-term objectives to short-term immediate goals, right? And sometimes these are contradictory, and there's no walking away from it. These are at conflict. So one of the things that we have used, and we try and make sure that we keep reminding ourselves, and we use it as a benchmark, is to say that, look, eventually the reason for existence of any technology anywhere is to be able to impact outcomes for the brand or the marketer that we work with. And therefore making sure that there is a tangible connect back into those real world outcomes, rather than some esoteric theoretical, Charan mentioned as well, that it's a shiny new technology, looks really cool, but you really don't know what it means in your impact, is not is definitely not where you want to be as a platform. And therefore, one of the things that we've tried to do, which I think gets appreciated a lot by a lot of customers, is the fact that we try and align to their internal goals or of outcome. Now, as a product in the data space, you have two advantages. I think that we see. One is because you, as a customer data platform, you end up becoming the data hub. You have the ability to be able to impact not just the outcome utilizing that data, but also all of the other investments that the enterprise has made in other intermediary technologies. Because the fact is that enterprises are like multi-headed hydras with multiple node systems, each one of them having an investment and a thesis on why that was invested. And as a data platform, you have the opportunity to be able to impact not just the overall ROI in your investment, but also each one of those downstream ROI, tool ROIs. Because the better you are able to help them leverage your data, every one of those tools is able to do better because you complement them with your central intelligence. And therefore, um, uh, we have often worked with customers where while we do take pride in the fact that there are certain things which are in our circle of control that the tool does directly impact. There are certain things which are outside the tool's control, and yet we are comfortable working and stepping up to say that, look, let us work with you to help you achieve your final outcome metrics. Because the fact is that end of the day, whether we like it or not, whether we think that short term or long term, the fact is all businesses are driven by short-term objectives as well, which is how much revenue did you drive. Much as we may feel as product companies sometimes that look, we are solving the great problems of the world. The fact is, you have to be able to drive the next transaction. You have to be able to drive the next click through and the next customer acquisition, and that's rubber hitting the road. So that is something that we do focus on, and we are comfortable stepping up to that, even if it is not necessarily in our circle of control. It is always certainly in our circle of influence, because you're able to work with enterprises to influence those processes and the decisions that they take to drive their choices. That's I think the most important cardinal principle, which is not to forget that you're in business to drive outcomes for the market. And as long as and honestly, that's the only sustainable way of growth, which is that as your customers become more successful, you become more successful with them, and your customers become successful when their customers love them. So how do you deliver that on a sustained, consistent basis? So your customers get loyalty from their consumers, and then your customers become loyal to your product, and so on and so forth. That's the only positive loop. So that's one of the things that I think Charan hit the nail on the head there. Eventually, it's about outcomes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's a wonderful point to make. While we focus on the long-term strategy, the short-term goals can't be left by themselves, and one needs to continue to straddle both objectives while looking over the horizon. So I think that's a important point. So what we're saying now effectively is, I'm sorry, let me look at the clock. I think we have another 10, 12, 13 minutes. Would request the audience to start adding in their questions for the panelists to be answered at the end of the discussion. We'll leave the last 5 minutes for this. Yeah, and it'll help if you can key in your questions so that I can then read them out to the panelists and they can answer them. Discussion. I think there have been very pertinent points that we've really made, and there are great learnings from all of these. Going forward, do you think? So if I was to, let's say, do a quick roundup, for example, on what should be 2 or 3 elements that you would consider in a given solution to decide whether it meets your metrics for purchase or adoption in your organization. Kumar?
Yeah, sorry, Suraj, so can you repeat the last sentence? I missed that.
Sure. So I was wondering if, what would be the 2 or 3 metrics against which you would evaluate a certain solution available to you, certain technology available to you, to decide whether to adopt it or not to adopt it. What should be the check boxes, minimum check boxes that it should say yes to, for you to say yes.
Sure. So means like Charan and Aditya said, obviously it has to be aligned with our end objective and what we want to achieve from that tool. So so given that those tools satisfy the basic feature requirements and all, like I mentioned earlier, it has to be integrated with what we are already having, because otherwise, we don't want another tool which works in a silo, and then we spend more time reconciling reports between these different tools and trying to figure out which is right and which is wrong, or what needs to be changed. So that is a big criteria for us when we evaluate any tool. And then in terms of regulation and future proofing, that becomes very, very critical, because at the end of year we don't want to completely drop that tool and again look for a new tool. So their future roadmap and whether that fits with how we plan to scale ourselves and our customers, is that becomes very, very critical. And like I said, being in telcos, definitely regulation was one of the key things, like especially things like GDPR, and in India also we are expecting the regulation soon. So how do we ensure that we are complying with all those regulations, and that doesn't become an additional burden for us to kind of comply and do a lot of manual work. So how does it help automate all these things and do that. So, and of course, if at the end, if your objective is hyper personalization and very very segmented approach, if your product requires that, then that should be possible to be done on that. So basically, future proofing.
Right. Thank you, Kumar. Charandeep, would you like to add to this?
Kumar has covered everything. I think data security, privacy is, I think, key criteria. Um, and while going for any technology or its integration, its connectivity with core systems, as he mentioned, is also important.
Yes.
And you know, as I said, it's not just customer UI UX. Even if my employees are using it, it has to be available on mobile. So mobility is a key consideration for us to get any technology, because most of the people who will use these technologies will be either feet on street, and with working from home, not having everybody having access to core desktops and systems. So I think mobility and therefore ensuing UI UX is, I think, are these are some of the important considerations while selecting a tool. And ROI, of course, will always be there at the back end.
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. All
That's
the
a
time.
huge thing.
Right. Aditya?
Hey Suraj, thank you. So I would just say that I think eventually for any enterprise, one of the things that Charan said, which is very important, is having clarity on what the objectives are of a deployment. I think if why you're deploying is very clear, then almost all downstream activities on the deployment automatically get better alignment, because there is clarity between the thesis of why you choose a product and what you intend to achieve with that, to what gets done subsequently. Otherwise it ends up becoming a little more meandering till you get down to using whatever deployment that you do for the right stuff. The second thing that I would call out is, I think, from for any enterprise that we've seen that deploys any stack, I think the most important thing going forward is you know historically enterprises have found themselves in situations where they had to continue to use a tool because the tool pretty much held them to ransom, saying this data will only reside in the tool, and until you keep using my tool, you'll have access to the data. Going forward, across the world, all technologies will have to become more democratic, and they will have to give enterprises access and control over the data. So any tool that gets chosen, it's going to be very, very important for an enterprise to know that they have control on that data, and they have control on all of their data, not some parts of the data, or not just on some insights that they've got, but the raw data. Because eventually this is all the enterprise's ownership, and this is also the enterprise's liability, because all regulations require the enterprise to have that control. So having tools that do that is going to be very important. Third is, I think all tools will have to talk to other tools, because consumer expectations demand today that enterprises behave like a single organism and not like a collection of different animals in each channel and each interface, and different businesses, parts of the business not knowing. And therefore the ability to integrate, communicate, and become part of that whole to deliver a unified customer experience is going to be very important, because that's an objective all enterprises have to pursue, which is that they have a single brain, and all of those arms and legs cannot behave in cohesion and deliver a consistent experience to the consumer. So choices that get made will have to make sure that whichever tool that they're choosing are going to have that architecture to support integration and interoperability with other tools. And finally, I think from a security standpoint, that's a given for any product that's going to play in the enterprise space, more so in regulated enterprises like fintech. You've got to have compliance with regulations. You've got to be you've got to have high security policies. So some things like ISO 27001 or SOC 2 Type 2, or GDPR compliance. I think these are table stakes. These are no longer differentiators for products that aim to work with enterprises, and enterprises will anyway look for these things.
Right.
So that'll be my few points to add.
I think that's a fantastic discussion. I think a lot of learning has come out of this. Allow me to open this up to questions to the audience. I believe we have one. It says, and it's addressed to all the panelists. It says, what is going to be the next big thing and one need to move fast to take over first mover advantage. Also, there are many MarTechs, and how do you choose what is best for you? It's open to the panel, so any of us can take this.
See, when the question is about crystal ball gazing, it's always very difficult to answer because everybody is on a different path. Each industry has its own maturity curve. Uh, I think the second part of the question we have already tried to answer, like, in the last question, how do we really evaluate what MarTech suite or, what product or tool we need to onboard? So clearly security, mobility, UI, UX, customer experience, as Aditya mentioned, and, the ROI of that tool is important. Answering the first question, I don't know the person who has asked the question belongs to what part of the world and what industry. But what I am clearly seeing is that voice is going to play a big role going forward, and definitely analytical based digital marketing where you are now able to give almost n is equal to 1 offer to everybody who visits your digital assets. So those are the two areas where we will be very focused on going forward. So I think that's from maybe a BFSI industry perspective, but this is a very tricky one to answer.
Yeah, the first one is very tricky because it is very industry specific and many ways in which you can skin that cat in terms of what's going to be the next big thing. But as far as MarTech and how do you choose MarTech is concerned, I think the only couple of suggestions that from my side, both having been in the industry, having sold products in the industry and having been on the other side, I'd say that you want to choose essentially an approach of capitalization versus expense. And that's the only suggestion I would give. And I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about data. A tool or the approach to your marketing has to be one that allows you to build an asset out of every single data spend that you do. Every single interaction is an opportunity for you to collect and become more intelligent about your customer expectations. Because if you don't capture it right, you cannot possibly go back and recover it. It's like white noise, it's lost in air, right? So the ability of the tool to be able of any tool that you choose or the stack that you choose has to be one that allows you to capitalize the insights that you can draw from an interaction so that you can utilize it later when you want to be able to drive more meaningful relationship. And that's the only suggestion I would have. Of course, there's a lot more nuance and many layers and points to be discussed there. So I think that this came from Mohammed. So Mohammed Adjair, feel free to look up our content. Feel free to reach out. We'd love to be able to share some more thoughts on this from our side. But that's my 2 cents.
Great. So just for the benefit of everybody, and I'll just summarize the 6. I think we've kind of put down about 5 or 6 key points which one would look at when one is evaluating building a MarTech stack. And those considerations would be: 1, what should be your marketing goals and objectives? 2, is the solution security compliant? And that's a given in the sense that anything that doesn't fit this criteria has to fall off the radar automatically. How easy is it to integrate with your legacy systems, and how simple is it to operate? I think that's a very important point because you don't want to lose legacy, and that's critical. How easy will it be to scale going forward? So how future ready is the product or technology available, and how flexible is it to adopt going forward? I think are the key metrics that you would want to measure any technology solution at before you decide whether you want to take it on or not. Thank you for being a wonderful audience. Thank you so much, Charandeep, Kumar, Aditya. You've been a wonderful panel as well. Thank you, DIFC, for enabling this discussion. And with this, we kind of come to a conclusion on this session. Thank you so much, and have a great evening going forward.
Thanks, everyone. Charandeep, Kumar, good to
Bye,
see you again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Suraj.
Thank you. Bye-bye.